Hey everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Fazz.
And I'm Rich.
And hold it! I'm Fiona. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Fiona, what are you dressed as?
What do you mean, what am I dressed as?
Yeah, I don't know. I do know, but, I'm just making you say it out loud.
Well, first, maybe this will help you.
That actually doesn't help me, but okay. I know what you're dressed as. That's a badge. That looks like some sort of...
This is what you do.
Attorney
You stick,
badge.
you stick your
law
badge in the
firm.
face.
A law firm of some kind. There's a balance.
Unfortunately, I've played far too much Yakuza, so I assume you are some kind of gangster.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, couldn't it? No, it's an attorney's badge. I'm throwing it in your face because that is what Phoenix Wright would do.
That is what Phoenix Wright would do, and that's what you're dressed as.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. You look great.
I've got no regrets.
Thanks for coming.
Dress the young ones.
I was dressing like Phoenix Wright from the waist up in your spare room.
Please tell me you went to work dressed like that today. That would be great. It's like...
No, I didn't. I would like to use some of the tactics at work, but we'll get on to that.
I just really wanted it to be so important. You were like, I have to get up dressed today. Like this. So, I kind of I guess painted this as some sort of showdown based on Phoenix Wright. I kind of have something that isn't Phoenix Wright-y, but relevant to Phoenix Wright to review this week. But I think we need to clear the air on the Phoenix Wright review that I gave last year of Ace Attorney, the first game.
You two crack on. I'm going to get some sweets.
Well, no, you're involved in this. You
What?
helped cause this.
Oh.
So I reviewed Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney last year, the first game, and it was a Freeplay Fortnightly.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of our first ones we actually did. I was kind of middling in how I felt, inconclusive, if you will, on the evidence presented to me by Phoenix Wright about how I actually felt about it. I didn't realise then, when Rich then gave it a 7 out of 10, my score would have been lower, but doesn't really matter. The rules that are sacred is that Phoenix Wright is a 7 out of 10 in the law of Living La Vita Loca podcast.
I fought for that 7.
Yeah,
And that's the reason we're still together.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's good to know.
And then obviously I heard in the grapevine from Rich that might have angered you in some sort of fashion. This is Wright-Mania, which is like WrestleMania, but Phoenix Wright-Mania.
Phoenix Wright-Mania.
Mania, Beatlemania, I don't know. Anyway, we'll workshop that. Because you have some strong feelings about said review, but also about Phoenix Wright in general. And you're backing that up with a review of Ace Attorney Investigation Collection, I believe?
I am, yes.
Cool. So, would you like to scream and shout at me first about my, indecent review of Phoenix in general?
You fucked up.
Or would you like to get into why you like the series so much through your review? You take it away, whatever the attorneyism is.
You take it away. I don't think that's a legal term.
That's what Phoenix Wright would say, because it's shit, so it's okay.
Well, had you stuck with the series, there is a prosecutor who does sometimes say "Let's rock," so
okay, cool.
it could be a thing.
That isn't Miles Edgelord, is it? No,
it's not. In fact, it's my
Have
first
fun
point.
with this, Fiona.
My first point
Gonna
is
get
I
some more
can't
sweets.
believe we both forgot Miles Edgeworth's name. He's like the key kind of. If you only played the first game, he's pretty important.
yeah.
Oh, that's why I forget his name. I just get lost in his eyes. Game recognises game.
He's well drawn.
Yeah. Damn straight.
So, you only played the first game. So, my beef with this is I know you're busy. but
I'm really not.
I did a lot of research for this, unbelievably, and so
You really did.
I'm really excited about this. I want to be beaten down. It's great.
I've read some really interesting stuff by a lot of people who are involved with the series over time, and I might give you some links. I don't know if you put them in the podcast, but they're pretty fun. And
we can do that.
Yeah, one of them was saying that one of the guys who was one of the main, I think, creative directors, maybe, he'd done the initial one was like, so I think you mentioned in your podcast, part of the charm of it is they just have these really over the top characters,
Mm.
and you defeat them in court, and then suddenly the animation goes haywire, and like doves
Love
come
it.
out of their hair, or their skirts
Love it.
fly over their head, or whatever it is. Something explodes, and you're like, yeah, I got them. And it's very cartoony. But they all considered this to be like the kind of safe initial one, and once it went down well, they really just upped the ante and like just not even jumped the shark, just like majestically sailed over it on a sparkly unicorn, and were like, no, this is our path now. So things only get more ludicrous from the second one onwards, and continue to be so. I don't want to spoil or anything, but there's like some genuinely quite terrifying and traumatic ways of dealing with corpses that are kind of weirdly hilarious how they're handled. But if you were to do it on like a Netflix series with real people, you'd have to rate it an 18 for like just levels of disturbed. Most importantly, there's a magic rock you can shove in people's face. You can see into their hearts. You can like uncover their secrets. If they're hiding something, they get locks over their chest. And
with a rock, is that
magic rock?
Okay.
Magic
Sorry.
rock.
Sorry, I missed out the important part of the rock.
It's like my coaster, Fazz. It's this sort of thing, and it's a magic rock, and basically the sensitive way in which Phoenix Wright employs this arcane and spiritual emblem of the Fae family through the centuries is just to slam it in people's face and yell, "Take that," and then proceed to shatter their psyche so he gets what he wants out of them. Lovely, no notes.
That's kind of dark when you put it like that. I didn't.
When you put it like that,
Yeah, I didn't read it.
if
like
you
that.
overthink things in the Ace Attorney universe, it gets quite dark quite quickly.
Yeah.
So I enjoy the idea of the characters and all that crazy kookiness is fine. I think my main problem with the game when I played it through was that it felt like I was wasting time a lot of the time, and I don't. Does that improve during this series or not? That isn't, or maybe. Well, you could just say, well, you're wrong anyway in general, which it doesn't need to improve.
Depends on your definition of wasting time.
But like,
Any time spent in the company of great characters truly wasted time, so I don't know.
well, maybe not
People
though. That's
write this
probably
art.
that's probably
They created this for you.
that's probably the thing though, isn't it? Maybe it isn't. It's just I felt like when I was what I was going to say orienteering around the world, but like, when I was going from scene to scene, if you will, it felt like I don't know. It just didn't feel like there was enough fluidity around that in terms of me feeling like it was a world that I want to live in. It was just remember Hatful Boyfriend,
Yeah.
and it just and
How
you were
could I
like,
forget?
but you were like it's a PowerPoint. This felt like a very PowerPointy, and I assume and hope it becomes less of that maybe later on. Maybe it doesn't, but
The structure's quite similar. So I've only played the first 4 in the mainline series, and I started 5, but I was still grumpy with the series because of what it did in 4. That is basically basically the first 3, Phoenix Wright is your protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
In the 4th one, it starts the Apollo Justice trilogy, and they had tried to bring in like a new protagonist, and they had to therefore kind of sideline Phoenix Wright for plot reasons. But the way they did it, I felt was just terrible for like character and everything else they built up in the other ones. And I was just really cross at it. So I was slightly on strike, but I'm going to go back and finish them. What was my point? Oh yeah, so no, in the ones that I played, no, it does. I wrote down, that was a fair point of yours, that you do sometimes feel a bit blocked as well in the originals, where you'll be there, you'll be like, I need some more evidence because it's not clicked me into the courtroom bit of it yet. But I've got 3 locations, and I don't know which one I need to go back to, and which rock I didn't quite poke enough times.
yeah.
So it was a bit
I remember that
non-fluid sometimes, and you went back and forth sometimes so much in a day that you're a bit like, how many times are you allowed to visit the detention centre?
Yeah.
Without wishing to spoiler things too much, it seemed that wasn't necessarily the case with what you'll be reviewing. It seemed like it played a little bit different and a bit less PowerPointy.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Which excites me a lot more because just thinking about this specific example, I think it's like the lake setting where it's like, oh, you've got like the path to the lake, then you've got I believe a cafe, then another setting, and then you get to the lake, and then you have to press like left to then reveal the character, and then they'll say something to you. It's like, oh, I've already told you this. You're like, like I've got to press back. It's probably my own fault in the first place, but it definitely felt like when I spent that sort of 3 or 4 minutes doing that, it just really sucked me out of the experience of when just the main enjoyment of the courtroom. So yeah, that was probably my main bugbear with it, really. And I just didn't see the fascination with it, which I'm sure you're about to correct me on about why.
She's dressed like Phoenix Wright.
Yeah,
I haven't done the hairs though, just for the viewers at home, the non-viewers at home.
The non-viewers. Yeah.
I don't think there's any doing their hair.
No, that's true.
But yeah, I think that's a fair point, and I think I wanted to sell you it though on terms of like the rest of the story, because definitely does. I think you get over that a bit. That kind of, how do I work this? I think it feels easier. I don't think it necessarily is easier in the later ones, but I think because oh, actually, if I haven't had like Gumshoe bursting into the scene with some evidence, I've probably not triggered the next bit that means I should be leaving here. And you get to spot the tells that are the sort of not so subtle hints of like, you're done here, you can shift now. But yeah, there's just a lot of extra kind of characters and nonsense, and you picked up in your review that it's quite soapy. That's what I really like about it. Like, it is just utterly ludicrous what everyone goes through, what the characters are. I mean, again, I don't want to spoiler it too much, but I'm going to need to just tell you a little bit about the prosecutor in the second one, because it's not Edgworth again. I did read something that suggested that people at Capcom thought that it would be a bit sad if he just kept getting beaten by Phoenix Wright forever.
Yeah, the best prosecutor ever. Constantly getting hammered.
Until this rookie comes along. So you get another prosecutor who is genuinely terrifying. She's an even more prodigious prodigy because she's only 17. Don't ask how you qualify as a lawyer in the Phoenix Wright universe. I don't know.
Lottery?
She's does seem like it. National service of some kind. But yeah, she's the daughter of a very famous lawyer and like very like sort of laser focused on the pursuit of perfection. And best of all, she comes with her own whip. So like the violence really escalates. And
like across the courtroom, just sort of like
100%. I'm pretty sure some people do get whipped unconscious at some point. I've also got a list of little tasters for you that aren't spoilers, and I've basically written it under a heading of trauma for all. So the characters that you get to know and love. And I'm kind of including like the sort of main characters and the ones that you find out more about rather than just your witnesses and things. But across the 3 Phoenix Wrights, various ones of them get a combination of shot, accused of murder, impersonated very badly, eating glass, getting tasered, falling off a burning bridge, being trapped in a freezing cave, hitting the head with a fire extinguisher, attacked by a literal lion, car accident while on the phone, and amnesia. And I think I've missed some out. Yeah. So like it really
they're
is
good though.
like
they're
very
good. They're
soapy.
Yeah. It's very casualty, isn't it?
Yeah. It is very casualty.
If you had to pick a way to go, out of all them, like the lion, I think quick, fun.
Would it be quick?
No, I don't think the lion would be quick at all.
No. Well, come out of an ice cave though. I don't want to be stuck in an ice cave.
That's a fair point.
No. The fire extinguisher is probably quick.
Okay, fair enough. Unless someone sprayed it, onto you,
dropped it on your foot,
like,
and then...
you died from internal bruising on your foot, for a long period of time.
Oh, you got
fell
me
off a
finally.
Bridge, hopping away.
So basically, I think you should do the rest of the trilogy because it is great, and the final instalment of the 3rd Phoenix Wright one. Just, I think I remember saying to you at the time, it felt like a bit of a victory lap, but in a good way, like not a self-indulgent way, just like a, hey, we know you love all these guys, kind of. A lot of cameos come back. There's lots of different faces that return, and the story just wraps a lot of stuff up really nicely.
The whole game feels like it's having a victory lap before it's even started. It's just like...
It deserves it. It's fine. But I did also write that your fair point otherwise was what on earth do attorneys and prosecutors do here, which I'll probably have to come to at some point in my review because. Who knows? Who knows what the job of these people is? It looks great.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't fit with what I think. Like, I know a couple of lawyers, and admittedly they're not like the sort of courtroom lawyers, but I don't think any of this is what they get taught.
No.
I assume it's not writing.
And what did you reckon to? I think I kind of alluded to Phoenix Wright being pointless as a like not the character himself, but as in like his
Careful,
function
Fazz.
almost. But his function almost like, you know, like I think I used what was it sort of said about the Indiana Jones thing, where if you left Indiana Jones out of Raiders of the Lost Ark, everything would still happen the same way. And it felt like Phoenix Wright, like no matter what I did, even no matter how wrong I was in the courtroom, there was always like, you know, somebody there to say, "Oh, Phoenix, you should just go back and take one more look at this." Jeremy was almost like, and I'm like, "Oh, I really can't fail here." Like, it's almost like.
I mean, you can't...
Does that change at all, or?
No, it's still very much you can stuff it up enough times that it'll all just like be game over, but then you just restart it. But I kind of don't agree that it feels like he's used. I think actually, and again, this might come from what I talk about later, but definitely I really enjoyed, like you did, I think, if I remember, being in Phoenix Wright's head.
Yeah,
because he is like an actual character. He's not like a blank slate.
Yeah, he was
quite a bitch sometimes.
Yeah.
I think he looked at some artwork. If you click on some artwork, because you're just used to clicking at everything, you'd be like, "Oh, some people call this art, but I call it a disaster," and like stuff like that.
Yeah,
it didn't need to be in there, but was funny and made you think, "Oh, this is like an actual person." But I think when stuff's failing, it kind of feels like that is a bit in character, because ultimately he is a rookie lawyer. He's done like barely a single case before he has to be the lawyer in charge of quite a serious murder trial.
Whoa, in lawyer years in this game, he's like, you know, he's like 95.
True, yeah.
He's been around for ages. 23, isn't he? You know,
just taking it really slow, really. But yeah, I think it feels like he is doing it. But I think for me, it felt like even when I was screwing up, it felt like Phoenix might also have been over bluffing and screwing up, which felt in line with the character. So I didn't see that as too bad a thing. Okay,
fair enough. Yeah. In terms of the trilogy itself, then, and then going forward, and obviously your disdain for Apollo, it seems that is it. Like, and the number of games that you've played, is there a specific point in any of those games where you go, "This is like peak, like Ace Attorney," or are you going to come on to that? Naturally, I might
come on to it naturally, but I think in terms of the Phoenix Wright ones and the Apollo Justice ones, because I've not played the rest of the Apollo Justice ones, I feel it's a bit unfair to... 4 was like a low point for me, partially because of the characters, partially because I just wasn't as interested in all of them, but also because it wasn't just that I wasn't interested in the characters as much that were the new ones, but also that I felt like a couple of returning ones didn't feel quite true to what I thought they'd been before. And they sort of offered you a bit of an explanation as to why that might be, but it still felt a bit like, "Oh, but I know these guys. This isn't right. They wouldn't have done that. That wouldn't have been their reaction." So I think for me, unbelievably, in a game that is entirely about suspending your disbelief, and if you can't do that, this is not a game for you, that was where I started to like lose that ability to kind of suspend my disbelief and just roll with it a bit. So that's a low. I think a high is, I think the third one is great, particularly the way it all wraps up at the end, because it is just utter nonsense. Like, I could try, I don't want to spoiler it because it is so ludicrous, but if I tried, I genuinely don't think I could explain to you the plot of that murder.
I couldn't spoil it anyway.
It's utterly insane. It's unhinged. Yeah, it's great.
Cool. So it sounds like you think I've probably done it a disservice, mostly because I've not played the whole thing. Is that, or is it just because?
Or am I bluffing? am I doing a classic turnabout and just trying to like find another angle to get? No, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. If it's not, I think what I do acknowledge about the Ace Attorney games is if it's not for you, it's not for you. It's a really particular type of game, and if you want more. I nearly said more action for your thumbs. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, you don't really, you just click things. If you want to be doing a bit more,
I like that. I quite like that. and this is where it was a bit weird for me, because like I think I remember saying in our review of the year, like we almost had Phoenix Wright as like, you know, did Pokemon Yellow get the best 7 out of 10 game? I think, and I'm sure Phoenix.
No, I think it might have. Yeah,
and I think Phoenix Wright was almost like, I know, but I think Phoenix Wright was almost like, is Phoenix Wright really good? And I was like, so I'd kind of come round on the idea of it, and And also, and this will make you feel pretty good about yourself, and me feel like a dirty piece of muck in the sewer. Like, is it like, you know, where like the other day I was like, oh, it's not on Game Pass anymore. I was like, oh, do I need to buy? Do I need to buy the rest of Phoenix Wright to finish it off?
The entire Odyssey.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, do I need to backtrack on everything I've said about it? I don't know, like, as in, yeah, it did just feel like the first, and I get what you're trying to say that you probably need to delve into more, but the first game in isolation for me felt like an average game experience, even for enjoying that kind of point and click adventure sort of thing, mostly as a genre. But yeah, I don't know, like, I could be wrong about that too.
I do wonder if, like, sorry, just because, like, you mentioning about how the first one they played it kind of safe, considering when it came out as well, and you mentioning point and click, like, I guess even for when it came out originally, it was possibly seen as a bit of a throwback.
Yeah.
So I could see why they possibly did feel the need to be like, okay, let's try and make it, you know, vaguely sensible, and then like properly go all out with it.
2001 Game Boy Advance.
Really?
Yes.
I was aware I was coming on the gaming podcast, so I
you did more homework than
I've
I did.
got my court record.
Yeah, no, well done. Yeah.
And I never really thought about it either. I played, not that it makes a difference because it's the exact same game pretty much. It just looks a lot better. But I played the remaster, and
me too, yeah.
I never really had like the pixel sort of, you know, the original.
It's impressive that it came out on the GBA though.
Yeah, and that's
what I've written down anyway.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
And it's like, yeah, that's crazy to think that it's so old, especially thinking now that they're still, I guess, remastering and remaking, you know, things from 2008, 2009 with the, you know, the Investigations collection as well. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that then? Or you got more to say and bollock me with?
That's pretty much it. I don't want to spoiler it. No, never mind. I'm not going to spoiler it. But basically, okay. I think you're not wrong. I think the first one, in some ways, is setting its stall out, and I think actually that the sort of last couple of episodes in that really start to crystallise what it's about and what it can do by following a bit of a character arc and stuff, and not just being murder of the week. And then it really carries that sort of approach through into the second ones. But I think you're not wrong that the first one's probably a bit more uneven, because the first couple of murder cases are very much like, what is this game? What am I doing? Why is this lady with the big tits suddenly coming back from the dead to tell me I've not looked at my book closely enough recently? Like, you know.
What do you say it like that?
I don't know why you had a problem with the game.
Put it like that though, and
Mia and the girls are very disappointed.
It almost sounds like they weren't expecting people to play to the end. When you put it like that, and then they were just like, "Well, if you made it this far, have some character stuff."
I think I probably owe it to our friendship, Fiona, for me to go back and probably play the rest of the first Phoenix Wright trilogy at some point, and I will. And, you know, going back to the point where you said, you know, I was busy. That's not, again, not true, really. As in, you know, like, so, yeah, not too busy to try that out. I will go back and see if it changes my mind. If it doesn't, then you might get really angry at me, because it might be a whole different kettle of fish. Like, no, actually, I do think it's shit. I know, but it might be really good. So, yeah. It was still like a high-end recommendation on the average side, if that makes sense. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, so, yeah. Do you want to go on to Ace Attorney Investigations?
It might take a while to stop me if it takes
No, that's
too
cool.
long.
We always enjoy your, like, you know, in depth.
It's getting serious.
I don't want to actually sweat like Phoenix, right?
That's fair.
Quite unfortunate. Right. So yes. So I have reviewed, for your listening pleasure, Ace Attorney Investigations 1 and 2. It's a collection that's come out on the PS4. And it came out in September, and luckily for you all, I was quite ill for a few weeks, so I had some time off work to blitz through it. So I'd already played. This is it's a long, complicated history, actually. So the original Ace Attorney game came out in 2001, but then didn't get a Western release until 2005 on the DS. Then you had all of the Phoenix Wright ones. Then you had the first Apollo Justice one in 2007. And then this came out, Ace Attorney Investigations, in 2009. And then it had a sequel in 2011. But the initial one got a Western release with the full translation and whatnot, and the second one never did. It only ever had a well-regarded fan translation release that came out in 2014, but you couldn't play it otherwise.
It's crazy, isn't it? They just didn't take the time to localise it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
as in, like, after having, you would have thought, from what I understand is the success of the previous iterations of everything in the series, that you would have thought they'd just have bothered to carry on, you know.
Maybe ran out of steam a little bit,
Yeah.
sales-wise or something. Don't know.
Maybe. I should have researched that and I didn't.
It's all right, I never do.
And here we are still.
Yeah, won't worry about it.
But yes, they had like so I had to play this. So I played Ace Attorney Investigations Part 1 before this collection came out, but I'd had to do it in a version that was like on a phone app.
Okay.
So it was quite annoying because I had to like either use my dinky screen or like cast it to our TV and then it would all like stutter. That's the other reason I've not finished the Apollo Justice trilogy, because I think they're now also out on PS4 copies so I can put them properly on the TV, but I was doing it through my phone and it just was a bit janky over the Chromecast and stuff, which I don't think is the app's fault. I think it
was difficult to
watch.
It
was just testing a lot of
made it feel even more PowerPointy.
It did. But yes, so this collection encompasses both of them and they have updated them a little bit as well. So the original versions had sections that are that kind of classic, like Japanese, almost visual novel-y thing where you see like a waist-up picture of the character doing a few different animations at the front of your screen and then the text runs along underneath it for that sort of conversation bit. But there's also a bit where you're walking around more freely, and that was all very pixely, spritey in the original. And the new version gives you options to either use that old aesthetic or you can use the new updated version, which has some little chibi characters that are more like a line drawing kind of 2D thing, which are very cute as well. So you've got options.
Did you just do a little dance when you said chibi characters?
I did, yeah.
Nice.
When we talk about chibi, because I know we spoke about it before and stuff, like, as in, and I, the minimal amount of research that I did in this one, I was like, oh, I better just have a look and see what its game's actually about. Like, as in, and saw it was like, it was a really Capcom sort of like landing page is like, oh, this is our newest thing, and it shows you the difference between the pixelated form and, you know, what the updated form is, and then they use the word chibi, but then I thought chibi meant little tiny sort of like minimized versions, because from when you spoke about Final Fantasy 15, I believe, and also when I spoke about Link's Awakening, the remastered version on the DS, I thought, on the Switch, I thought they were like what that means, but then these look like fully formed characters of a certain size.
I think it's to do with proportions.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Capcom called it chibi, which is why I'm confidently doing the same thing.
They definitely do. They do.
Yeah, but I think it's less, because I've always thought of it as like the small kind
like
of
a little
stumpy
elvish thing, isn't
these
it?
definition
What you'd
of
sometimes
face.
call super deformed, quote unquote,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
really messed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's more about the proportions. So like their heads are still a little bit bigger
Right.
than
Okay.
they should be. Do you know, like it's not.
I've taken it as kind of like a cutesy, stylized version.
Yeah,
In broad strokes would be
Yes.
my read on it, but I don't know how accurate that is.
that's I'd settle for that.
Yep. Cool.
Acceptable.
Thank you.
Motion carried.
Do you carry on?
It's all right. So yeah, would you like to hear about the gameplay?
Yes. Yes,
So-
I would.
You are, what's his name again, Fazz?
Miles Edgelord. Worthy Edge.
Unbelievable.
Edge, Miles face.
Miles.
Miles face, Edge.
Mr. Miles.
Fine. So you're Miles Edgeworth, who I guess is a bit of an edgelord, to be honest. And that's kind of what I really like about him, is he seems quite scary in the first Ace Attorney because he's your opposition, but you soon find out that he's, if anything, got a big tragic story.
He's a cutie,
but he's
isn't he?
also a bit of a drama queen,
Bless him.
which I really enjoy, and that comes through a lot in this. So it's, oh god, right. The timeline of this series is dumb. I think officially some of this stuff in the original Phoenix Wright happens in like 2016, so some of the stuff in the Apollo Justice ones happens like in the future. I'm very confused. I
Is that
might
the
have been
future from
misled
then or
by
the future
fan
from now?
wiki. It's got to be a better timeline, hasn't it?
Someone called the
An
MCU.
alternative present.
Yeah. If you don't get COVID, you get that instead. We just lucked out and went down the wrong fork.
You just multiverse it.
So yeah, so this one is set. So you've got the main one's a Phoenix Wright, that kind of first trilogy, which is about 3 years, basically. Roughly, each Phoenix Wright one is about a year. It's kind of, I think, every case he has, it's a few months on from the last one, sort of thing. And
Feels
then
very stressful. There's like a lot of death in a few months.
It does seem like a lot,
Fazz,
doesn't it?
hold that thought, because what happens, I think, because they'd already done the Apollo Justice one, and as I say, they had to sort of sideline Phoenix Wright, which means they had to have a reason that you weren't playing as him.
Mm-hmm.
And something happens not too long after the original trilogy and before Apollo Justice that gives them an excuse to bring in a different character.
Okay.
And so they've shoehorned the Edgworth ones into that little gap between this thing happening and the end of the original trilogy, which means that I'm pretty sure the initial investigations thing happens like a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months after the end of the Phoenix Wright trilogy. And then I think the sort of 5 murder cases you do happen over about 5 days. Like, Edgworth has a hell of a time.
Yeah.
Like, it's not really spoiling because it's literally the first thing that happens is he comes back from being abroad, walks into his office, goes, "Do I smell blood?" And there's a body on the floor. Like, he is not a lucky man. And the second one, when I played that through, I was like, I wonder when this will start. I wonder if things will have changed, if the characters will have, had time to grow closer or, grown apart, or, like all these things. And then it's like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks after the end of the first one, everyone's like, I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. Oh, God, someone's dead again. Oh, no. Back to it, everyone.
For the players, it's been like 15 years. It's so like, all right, yeah.
Yeah. So and it's also over the span of basically a few days, which is brilliant. And I love the idea that, like, as opposed to like flailing rookie attorney Phoenix Wright, who is scrabbling around for cases constantly and complaining he doesn't get enough like custom through his doors. Edgworth's just like, when will it stop? When will it? This is literally happening in my home now. Like, guys, come on, stop it. My bodies in my car boot. I've had bodies in my office. I got on a plane. There were bodies there too. Like, what? When will this end?
It's just like, I mean, like me and Sal were talking about on the last podcast and stuff, and it's like Ludwig, like, is in like, that's like, there's a murder every episode, and Death in Paradise, just a murder in every episode.
Oh, it's very Midsummer Murders. If any of the main characters that you recognise in Ace Attorney go to do a thing or have a relative visit, or like, there's just murders everywhere.
I've been trying to solve a lot of Scooby-Doo recently. That's it.
When you say solve, it is mostly unmasking, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah, but you've got to know who's going to get demasked.
Sure, it's the caretaker. It's always the caretaker.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's weird. So, like, every weekend on ITV2 over in the UK, there's like an hour and a half Scooby-Doo movie on and stuff, and the kids love them. Like, as in just like, and I'm like, find myself sort of, by about 5 minutes in,
sleuthing.
Yeah, I'm really trying to like nail the person like straight away. Just so like, right, okay, it's this guy, and like they won't even introduced the person who's done it until like 3/4 of the way in. But yeah, I'm definitely getting to that point in my life now where I'm like in my mid-30s and just constantly watching mystery stuff, like where someone dies every 3 seconds, and I love it.
Maybe this is more your pace then. Maybe that was the problem. There was not enough frequent death in Phoenix Wright.
I need to smell more blood as soon as I walk through a room.
Yeah. It's an unenviable talent, isn't it, really? I was thinking, like, can you smell blood? Like, I don't know, maybe
when there's that much of it. Maybe. Don't know.
Maybe. Like I say, if
Not
you
gonna
film
test
these
that.
if you film these as like a live thing, I didn't mention also like coercive control that's another thing that comes up a few times in all of these various ones, and it's just the whole series would be like an 18 if you have to film it with real people, because the stuff that it covers, you can get away with it when it's all these cutesy characters with like hilarious pun names and big colourful outfits. But I think if you actually stop to think for a second about like the terrible murders, they're pretty grim.
Don't worry, Miles Edgeworth's hair looks wonderful, so it's fine.
It does. They've given that a zhuzh as well. So yeah, the gameplay is there's no courtroom.
Okay.
But don't worry, you still get to shout objection quite a lot.
Okay.
Which is basically...
I am concerned hearing there's no courtroom, because that's like my favourite bit.
No, I think you'd like this. So what you do is, because again, what is a prosecutor? As we all know, a prosecutor is an attorney who actually is allowed to look at the crime scene, apparently, rather than having to sneak onto it like Phoenix Wright always did. So you do a lot more investigating. So your stages, I guess, you've got investigating on the scene. So you're free to move around. So this is where you get your little chibi characters, your sprites, and you can wander around, click on things, and investigate them. And sometimes you will just pick up some evidence, and that goes into your, I think it's like your organizer or something.
Your sack.
Not
Your
quite the
sack.
corner. Yeah.
File of facts.
I never really bottomed
Fucking
out
love file of facts.
in Phoenix Wright. Like, is it literally
Just his pocket.
You know, when he's like, aha, the murder weapon, is he just getting it out of some kind of gym bag? Or like, is it a photo? I don't. So I have to assume, especially with Miles Edgeworth, it is a photo because, like, in my head, it's a file of facts kind of thing. But anyway, I digress. So you can get evidence from it. You can sometimes deduce things on scene.
Okay.
So this is when you find like a contradiction. So you're looking at one thing in the room, but you've got some evidence that makes you think that doesn't sit quite right. And again, it holds your hand quite a bit at this, but I think it's quite good at steering you, but not making you feel like you're being told what to do too much. But a little thing will come up saying you can deduce something. An early example that I've only changed slightly so as to try and not spoil you too much. But for example, you could be looking at a wall, and there's like a bullet hole in a picture that's like, you know, quite low placed down on the wall. But then you're like, hang on a second, that bullet we know went through the victim in the autopsy report. And you look at your autopsy report and be like, says it went through his head and he was standing, and be like, hang on, if he was standing, that picture's in the wrong place. Someone's moved the picture. Yeah. So you then present the evidence in that location to pull out what's actually gone on. So there's little bits like that are quite cool. That
immediately sounds so much better to me, though, because again, that was like the investigation part of the original game was just you know literally spoke to that one person, and that was it, and it wasn't any more to it. You couldn't move around or anything, and you couldn't deduce things necessarily. Yeah. You kind of did in the conversation, but you always just end up with that same sort of pile of evidence in that file of facts in your pocket. Like, so that sounds like, yeah, that I'm already a bit more like, oh, that sounds like more, you know, exciting to me.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do in the investigation bit is there's a logic bit that crops up. So you will get occasionally, rather than picking up some evidence, you'll have like a bit of a thought that's a lead, and it will very obviously flash up on screen and then like go into, I can't remember whichever button it is you click to find them, and then you can use your logic to mash together two different leads that you've got that are connected to come up with your next big clue. So as an example, you might be wandering around and you might have a bit of dialogue that then Edgworth goes, yes, well, clearly the crime scene is my office. That's who is obviously killed here. And then that goes up to the top and vanishes. And then later on, you might hear somebody else say, well, all these offices are under key and lock that only a small number of people have access to, and you see that go up there too, and you can click into the logic section. You get like a vroom kind of noise, and it like
what?
It's like
it's like on a motorbike.
I can't do the noise, but you know the noise. You've heard it for hours, but like it. It's like
have I?
And it's like a noise that like. And then it does the...
Oh, we do like that bit.
Yeah. It's not the crazy frog. I've made it sound
I know, yeah. What kind of discotheque are we in right now?
But I think of this as being like in kind of Edgworth's like mind palace almost. So
yeah,
like, and then you've got all these different leads that you've got. There's often quite a few of them. And then you piece them together like a jigsaw puzzle. So you'd have a few different options, but you'd be like, oh, hang on, there's something in... Been killed in my office is under key and lock. And then you... kind of jam them together, and if it's right, it will generate something like in this instance. Hang on a second, this can't be coincidence. This wasn't just luck of the draw killing. These offices are really hard to enter. Someone wanted it to be here. And then that's more evidence that you can then use later. So that I think is quite fun.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible to get it wrong, unbelievably. I did it a
Good.
few times. I had the problem that you had. I think you mentioned it in the originals. It still exists in this game too, where sometimes you're almost a step ahead of where it wants you to be. So you're like presenting evidence or jamming two bits of logic together, and it's like, no, and you're like, oh, and then you do something else, and you get halfway there, and you're like, oh, I was just like a step further ahead.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily tell what you're trying to prove with it all the time, but it's minor, really minor. So that's the kind of investigation bit, and you can still talk to people. This then leads me to like another important bit that's kind of the replacement of the court bit, so I think you'll still like it.
Okay.
So rather than being in court, which I guess because like if he does his job, the court bit would be really boring. You know, if you've got it right as the prosecutor getting your evidence, you just go into the courtroom and just nail them to the wall, don't you?
Yeah.
So that's logically, I guess, why that's not in there, because it would be quite dull.
Sounds too sensible to me, that.
It's low stakes. So you then, when you're talking to people, just like the court stuff in the Phoenix Wright ones, people will give their testimony in the same way that the witnesses do, and rather than cross-examine it, you get to give your rebuttal, but it's exactly the same thing. You're looking through the different bits of text and you're going, that doesn't sound right. Sometimes you have to press them to get more information, to unlock a bit of dialogue that you can then go, hang on, I've got some evidence here that says otherwise. And you still get to throw evidence in their face and say objection, and then hopefully unravel them a bit more to either get your next set of hints as to where to go and who to talk to, or at the end, that's how you sort of get people to confess as well. You'll have like a final showdown with someone who you're pretty sure is the murderer, but you've just got to get them to that point where they completely unravel. Their costume does all sorts of crazy things, that sort of thing.
I'm into it for that. You know, the more crazy shit like that, the better.
Yeah. So that's your kind of like core gameplay, I guess, going between these things. And you don't choose where you go. So the game just moves you on. You don't have to look at a screen and go, did I do the detention centre enough? Should I be going back to the garage? Like it goes, investigation complete. And then, because Edgworth is on it, he's like, right, we're off there. And then you're there.
Right, okay.
Which is quite nice, because I also didn't really enjoy sometimes being stuck, not on the actual puzzle, but just on the, where do I go? Yeah,
see, it sounds already like there's more improvements that is in from earlier on then, because again, that was one of the things that I had a bit of a gripe with. So, yeah, that's good that it does that.
Ace Attorney Investigations 2 is pretty much the same sort of core gameplay mechanics, but it has, hold on to your hats, mind chess.
Yeah.
So because Edgworth is actually a massive dork, and I'll probably bore you about this later, like characterization stuff, because it's very strong in these games, but he is a bit of a dork, and yeah, he's absolutely the sort of person who would be like, mind chess commence, which is what it says. Like, every time you go into this thing, he adopts like this little pose and like scowls over his shoulder, and then it comes on the screen like duff duff duff, mind chess commence, and then you go into like what I imagine is his weird fever dream of like what this is, and it's quite similar to what you did in the Phoenix Wright ones with that magic rock. You know somebody's hiding something, but you're not going to be able to get it with evidence. You know you're going to have to just trip them up on their own words.
You're going to get it with mind chess, yeah.
With mind chess. And that's basically you are going through a set of conversations. It's timed as well, so it puts a bit of pressure on. You have to choose the right dialogue options to get them to open up, and there'll be moments where you should bide your time, and often that is signified by the character maybe being a bit more aggressive or less aggressive, or something they've said, and Edgworth will give you a little hint at the start about like, oh, actually, when they're relaxed, maybe that's my moment to pounce. Or like when they're defensive like this, I shouldn't push it, I should bide my time.
Right, okay.
Or they're not giving me away physical tells, I just have to listen to what they say. And so there is a bit of skill involved where you have to figure out which your next option should be. And if you bide your time, you just like do this like sort of like nose in the air, finger tapping kind of thing, and they hopefully spew out some more dialogue, then gives you another option to go for the jugular. But when you do pick the options to actually go after something, there are these little chess pieces that hover near their head and yours, and you like the chess piece basically flies across at their chess piece and like knocks into it, bam, and you
I'm
You're giving me a look here, Fazz.
I'm sensing where they maybe thought, will we port this outside Japan? It's like...
I really, really liked it because I thought it was like a good extra little mechanic, but I thought it added so much, not just in terms of the way it makes you feel a bit more, because I don't know, I felt sometimes like with all the rest of the games where you're interviewing a witness or something, it's often quite, I don't want to say easy, because it's not always, but it is just, I listen to what you say, and if it's completely wrong, I give this evidence, and it's more about where's the lie, I can prove it. But actually, really, you'd be talking to people and you wouldn't always have the proof. So it is cool that there's a mechanic for, I know that my evidence is not going to get me where I need to go. I'm going to have to shake it out of them. I'm trying to think, what's that 70s like cop show where they sit on the chair backwards and like yell at
all of
people?
them. Yeah, all of them.
Happens quite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't want to spoil anything too much, but just as a sort of example of like Edgworth's character in this, he doesn't stray at all from his sort of like quite cold exterior and approach to things. And at one point, he does mind chess to somebody who is actually trying to calm down and make feel better about themselves, and it's excellent.
It seemed to me that was like a kind of third-party observer, if you like, to a lot of this.
A mind chess adjacent.
Yeah, but it seemed like when you were playing the Phoenix Wright ones and you had those kind of little bits, like you said about the magic rock and all that kind of stuff, he was using tools that other people brought to the game, like his assistants or friends or whatever, whereas the mind chess thing feels more like an actual character thing. So is that right?
Yeah, I've got a lot to say about
No shit.
this character, but like that's exactly right. And I think what I really liked about him and why I think they chose to go with him is because his character in the original series has this like really great arc, and it's not really a spoiler to suggest it's a redemption arc, because if not, it's kind of a poor choice to pick up a complete bastard and be like, players hate for 2 games. But he has a really convincing redemption arc, but they don't then undermine what makes him him. So sometimes you can fluff it, can't you? You can have a slightly villainous or like antagonistic character who gets won over by the heroes and then just becomes a bit of a sap like them. And you're just like, oh, you used to be so cool, man.
Yeah.
You're not,
yeah,
but no,
it's not believable.
Yeah, he's
or
absolutely still got a massive stick up his arse, wants to do everything by the book, thinks everyone else is not as smart as him, and unfortunately he is normally correct.
Yeah.
But they really play that out in how he operates. So when you're playing in like Phoenix's head, there's always that sense of like flying by the seat of your pants. He's just as confused as you about the evidence. Like his animations are like sweating bullets all the time and like genuinely quite desperate and just hoping that Mia's going to pop up and save the day.
Yeah.
But like Edgworth, they've written it so that when you fuck up, it's more like your fault than his. So it'll be more like, instead of, I think, in the sort of Phoenix Wright ones, it might be like, oh, no, there must be something I can find to show them this. It's got to be here, and he doesn't really know either. But he's just going to go for it. Whereas Edgworth's normally like, oh well, there was that one piece of evidence, wasn't there? And you're like, fuck.
I'm sorry, Miles.
Yes, I guess so.
Let you down.
Not all of us were lawyer prodigies. But they hang on to that, and things like the mind chess, absolutely feels like he's the sort of uptight but also quite dorky in that way where someone's just so intense about something it becomes quite adorable. You kind of can't take them that seriously anymore. And he does seem like the sort of person who'd be like, he'd be having a conversation with the cashier about like accepting a coupon and it actually is within date, and then he'd be thinking, and that's checkmate, and then walk out.
I'm gonna mind chest the shit out of this cashier.
So I really liked that. I've also written down, I feel like, and I think I know why, but I feel like I'm allowed to talk about Phoenix because, like, I was in his head. We're mates now. But I don't feel like I can call him Miles. I feel like he's Edgeworth.
I tell you what, as well.
Gone.
I think he would insist on that
Yeah.
because you're right. Like
Exactly.
that characterization is so strong
Yeah.
that I can sit here and go, well, he wouldn't be called Miles. Only his mother would call him that, and even then he'd be reluctant to actually respond.
Yeah, exactly. But also, when I thought about that, I did check, and they do. Yeah, in the Phoenix Wright games, you've got the little text boxes, and it's always Phoenix at the top. And actually, in the investigations games, you're always playing as Edgworth. Like, even though you're in his head the whole time.
Yeah.
It's attention to detail, isn't it?
It is. But also, he's very funny, and I think this is the kind of when you've got like a proper straight man character who's convinced that they're the only sensible person in a world full of like insane people, you can get a lot of comedy out of that. And there is quite a lot of really funny stuff. He's also quite bitchy in his head, but it's mostly about how stupid other people are, and how annoyed he is to have to be dealing with everyone, which is fair because Larry Butts does come back in this. So that,
Larry Butts.
see, you know. But again, isn't that a good character? Like, do you know, you react in exactly the same way as both Phoenix Wright and Miles Edgeworth do when he comes back on the scene. You're like, oh God, oh no, oh Larry, which I think is a really good character thing.
Yeah. If you're memorable, that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, really tough question for you to answer here. 2024, you've played 2 tactical games, Queen's Blood and Mind Chess, in this game. Which is the best?
Well, Queen's Blood is an actual game. Mind Chess isn't really. So, I'm going to have to say they're not comparable.
Get it
And
right,
that
Fazz.
checkmate.
I got Edgeworth there, didn't I? Jeez,
No,
I
but
am
I think-
Phoenix in this situation. I'm sweating bullets.
I think the Mind Chess. It's not really a game. I wouldn't call it a mini game or anything like that. It's just another
Oh right, okay.
mechanic.
I guess
Yeah,
that was
it's
my
sort of
that was my
it's not.
genuine question. Was it is it like a mini game or
I
is
sort
it
of classify mini games as like a standalone
okay?
thing, and this just feels like you're actually understanding how he interrogates somebody rather than like it's a separate.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's more
You
like
can't
his
go
kind
back
of.
to it and play it again, or like
It's like his view of the situation and the people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than necessarily something you could say dip into a menu and play a game of.
yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Yes, yeah. I also I don't want to get into it too much, but the other characters you get in this game are really good too. So you get some recurring characters. So again, I can't go into it too much, but like the prosecutor from the second series, she's back because they are. Okay, it's not a really massive spoiler. In the first one, the whole tragic backstory, the part of it that I'm willing to share without spoiling people from the great arc that happens, is that like Edgworth loses his dad quite young, and ends up kind of like really putting his all into becoming this prosecutor, and he gets mentored by a very like savage prosecutor, and he kind of gets a sort of adoptive sister through that, who is the prosecutor in the second one.
Okay.
Which is also hilarious because their relationship is just excellent. They're both incredibly competitive, cannot admit their feelings for each other, and it's like, I don't know, it just felt very realistic in that sort of sibling way, where like you're very mean to each other, but like especially because you're in his head, there'll be occasional like moments of like softness, but that's not what comes out of his mouth because like heaven forbid. So that's awesome. And you do get a weird child assistant because this is still an Ace Attorney game. So your main one is Kay Faraday. And I won't really go into how you pick her up. But she's great. She's just a really good foil for Edgworth. And I think he needs that because he's such a straight-laced character that he needs somebody ludicrous and bouncy to be annoying him along the way. And that feels like quite... So Phoenix Wright's relationship with Maya always felt like kind of big brother, little sistery. Like annoy each other quite a lot, but in a loving way.
Yeah.
This feels quite like parental.
Okay.
But in a nice way. Like he feels quite responsible for her. And that again is like a really nice side to his character that you don't get to see in the other games.
Yeah.
And Gumshoe's back, who remains a terrible, terrible detective. But again,
how has he still got a job?
well, genuinely, because that was the big mystery of the whole 3 first games. Is like, who hired you? Why are you here? And why do you like Edgworth? Like, why are you so loyal? But you actually do find out. There's like some little flashback bits where you find out a bit about how they kind of first came together and worked together, and why they actually do still partner up
Okay.
so much. So that's also really nice. I just think so much care was taken with the characters to really continue the arc that started about where Edgworth goes once he starts to be less of a I'm just going to prosecute everyone and get guilty verdicts all the time, and starts to be more like I need to figure out what my place in the law is and what it means. It's just what
I want to know what law is.
Yeah, fair.
I had to do that because unfortunately, ever since you mentioned Kay, I've just had her theme tune in my head.
Oh, it's
play.
so bouncy. It's so
It
bouncy.
slaps.
She's great.
So
I really
good.
like her. But I think, I just think it's a really, really nice set of characters that are very thoughtfully put together to draw different bits out of each other.
And so, is this? Do you feel like this collection is super essential? That is in because it sounds like it really puts a lot into Miles Edgeworth's character and, like you say, his lore and things. But I guess it's only really available now to the entire world. That is in. So, do you think it's been a really important thing that they've brought out? And they didn't kind of not bring out that second game for like however 15 years or whatever to the rest of the world.
Personally, yes, because I was desperate to play it but couldn't, unless they wanted to do the fan translation, which I was starting to consider. So this was great. This was like Christmas. I was very excited. But I think it's probably... I don't know exactly why they chose to do it now, but I imagine it might be because
they're going to bring out another.
I really want Ace Attorney 7, but like with the characters I actually care about backing it. But anyway, I think the original trilogy packaged up on PS4, I imagine, might have done well. So maybe that's why.
Yeah.
They've also, I know, brought the Apollo Justice run onto PS4 too. So I think this is part of like, let's just make it all available. And I'm very biased, but like Miles Edgeworth is like a standout character. So I think these are not at all important in terms of plot. You can run straight through the ones that have Ace Attorney like titles and not do these ones, and I don't think you'd miss anything from what I know of the ones to come. But I think you'll get a lot out of it if you enjoyed his character and his story and some of the side characters that are quite closely linked to him, because you'll get to spend a bit more time with them and see a bit more behind the sort of grumpy prosecutor facade, and you'll get to hear inside his head with the grumpy prosecutor stuff inside his head too.
Cool. Do you want this game to have a free play score? I'm looking at Rich here because if you've seen and heard so much.
Oh, I need to.
Oh,
say
sorry,
one
got
thing.
some. Okay.
Yes, sorry. Hold it.
Yeah.
I think I just wanted to say as well that one of the things I really like about all of the games, and I've started playing the Great Ace Attorney as well, which is the Victorian setting. I don't love it as much.
Oh, really? I've read a couple of articles where it's good things about it, but
I think it might do. I haven't spent half as much time with it, and I think part of it I was thinking actually is that for me at the moment, the main guy you play as and his sort of sidekick don't have that bouncy off energy that Phoenix and Maya and Edgeworth and Kay do, that is so much fun even when you're just doing quite like jobsworthy bits of pointing and clicking. But that might get better. But I think one thing that the series just as a whole has really impressed me with is the localization.
Okay.
Because obviously it's all originally in Japanese, but a lot of it rides on puns, like really terrible puns.
Yeah. And
they've worked really, really hard to come up with really good equivalents. It's like Phoenix Wright's name. His surname in Japanese is like Naruhodo, which is, among other things, like kind of a bit of an agreeing sort of sentence noise that you make. But it's sort of the equivalent of like in English being like, oh, I see. Oh, is that so? So a really great translation for that is obviously right, because then you can make the same joke of like, right, what?
Yeah.
And they've done there's just some great names in all of it, but in the investigations ones, there's some really good ones too. I'd forgotten until I looked some of it up. In one of the early ones, a guy who gets murdered who's literally called Deed Man. But there is a character in this as well who, in the second Ace Attorney investigations, who is really interesting because you get to find out a bit more about Edgworth's past, and specifically his late father's past, because he used to be a defence attorney. This guy worked with him and was able to tell him a bit more about that. And because he's a defence attorney, his name is Eddie Fender.
Yeah, good, nice.
Which is it's just excellent. There's a reporter called Tabby Lloyd.
Oh, God. These are good.
But they're really, really good. And I know that I don't know how many of these ones did, but I know for sure that the sort of bolt-on final episode of the original Phoenix Wright game had a kind of bit of a clue that was all to do with the misunderstanding of a word. So they had to really like work around that in the localization. So I don't know how much of that there is in these ones, but it's just worth noting that it's not just pun names, but actually sometimes you need a good pun to move the plot along. So it's massively impressive. If you're interested, there's a ton of stuff you can read out there. There's a really good blog from the Capcom guys about how they did the localization, because it wasn't just about finding the best puns they could and equivalents, but actually there's stuff like they had to fit the same number of characters in those little boxes that the text comes up in, and Japanese is actually quite a compact language. They don't use like articles and a lot of the stuff that we do, so you can, and especially because of the if you're doing it in kanji, you've got like a whole word in like one or two symbols. So if you kind of think about that, you've got like a really condensed, neat bit of text, and then you've got to come along with your galumphing, awkward English language and like fit it into that same space, because you're not allowed to go over that. So there was just some interesting nerdy linguist stuff that is up my street about how you have to make those decisions and fit it in.
That's really cool.
And yeah, this does continue into the Great Ace Attorney, but only because I wanted to let you know that there's a prosecutor that you always do as like your starter prosecutor in the Phoenix Wright ones, and they're always called something pain, which I guess is meant to make you feel they're sort of a pain to deal with, and they're really annoying and squeaky voiced, and it's always really satisfying to wipe the floor with them. But they have a guy with the same face as your first one in the Great Ace Attorney. I was sat there because a lot of their ones haven't been localized quite as much. So the main guy you play as, he keeps his Japanese name, but so this one I was looking at it and going like, so I was like, I speak some Japanese. I'm gonna like, what? I can guess this. What does this mean? Yeah. I was thinking too hard about it, and then I read it out loud, and his name was like Ouchie. I was like, oh, hang on, no, I'm not. I overthought this. But it's very clever. I think what I just want to get across with that is, it seems like a really silly, daft series, and that's what drags you along and makes you, happy to be in the company of these ludicrous characters, but there's a real heart underneath them that they are quite consistent with, that makes it not just kind of like eating like a sweet and then it's just gone. This is more like a savoury meal. What am I trying to say here? I guess it's not just light and fluffy. There's some substance. There's some substance. Yeah. But also, this is one of those things that, like, actually, it's not a laugh a minute, but there are routinely quite a few chuckles, especially in what the characters say and some of those names, even if they are groans on occasion. And I think it's the sort of thing that you have to be quite talented and quite clever to come across that daft and silly. So okay. I think it's, don't take it at face value is what I'm saying. They're very, very good. What they've done is great. The Miles Edgeworth collection, it feels like fan service to release it anyway, so thank you, Capcom. More please.
They're listening. They're out there.
They might do, you never know. I'd like a walk on park, that'd be great. But I think the whole Miles Edgeworth bit anyway feels like fan service too. You don't have to know the background, but you probably should have played the Phoenix Wright first trilogy to get the most out of it, because you'd understand where he's coming from a bit more. But like it does feel like they've brought specific people back and given you that because they know that's what you enjoyed. And it's not a given that games, movies, books, that any content creator is going to actually listen to and care what the fans think. And my final piece of evidence for you, Fazz, is on these blogs that I've been reading from Capcom. They've got some links to some like cute cartoons that fans have made. There's one that's really funny that like points out how it's really inconsistent. You can't necessarily tell whether it happens in Japan or like California somewhere. It's very, very vague. But they've looked and they've seen and they've gone like, people find that funny, we're going to lean into it a bit. And they've just paid attention. And I think in quite a cynical, money-grabbing world sometimes, I will happily give my money to people who actually made these things with affection, polished them up with a lot of smarts, and then entered into a bit of a dialogue with fans about what is it you loved. We liked that too. Let's do more of that for you. Yeah. So that's my pitch. I want Ace Attorney 7 and I want it now. Yeah. And I think I did miss Phoenix Wright a little bit though. I feel like they're quite good like foils. So I wouldn't be against like a reunion.
A reunion, yeah. No, fair enough. That sounds awesome. That isn't like, you know, the thing that I really enjoyed about the first game and that I have enjoyed listening to you about there is just, like you say, it's almost the soapy family feel of, you know, like you say, it feels like there's more substance to it than you think that meets the eye about the whole game series. And actually the creators seem to have really cared about it. And you can tell by the amount of fans there are out on the internet writing and feeling things about this series. Under the Fiona's there, furiously tapping away.
I've not even gone into my theories about it, Fazz, out of respect for you and your listeners. I'm just saying I would like it to be a wedding in Ace Attorney 7. That's all I want.
No, that's going to be a side pod right there. Go on, Rich. Score it. Score Ace Attorney Investigations Collection.
So I was present for a not insignificant amount of this playthrough, and I think obviously the character stuff, you know, is always going to tick a lot of boxes for me, as is the soundtrack, which I don't know if it's just through sheer repetition or if it is genuinely catchy, but either way is just like wedged into my very being now. So that's there, and yeah, like I think. Two things jump out at me is the fact that it's less PowerPointy and less reliant on like still images of a location. You can actually move around and stuff like that, which kind of lends it an extra level of, you know, engagement, I guess. That said, I'm going to completely like undermine my own point because there is also that story mode where
that's true. I didn't even mention that.
The game literally plays itself.
Oh, right, okay.
So like if you are into the story or you have already played it through and you're just like, you know what, like instead of watching a series of the anime or something like that, you can actually just watch the game through and it will move him in the world and he will pick up the clues and do all that kind of stuff. But also I think it's like
definitely do that.
A good like, accessibility thing as well, which, you know, makes it available to even more people to enjoy. Add in all the stuff you were saying about the clever linguistic stuff and the heart and all that. A 9. I would give that a 9 all day. Yeah.
Cool. Fair enough. Wow.
Checkmate.
Yeah, fine, whatever.
The prosecution rests.
Prosecution rests. Well done.
Thank you.
It sounds like it evolves to me, like from, you know, I am going to go back and play the rest of the first trilogy, and I want there to be a world where there is a brilliant Ace Attorney game, and if this is the collection that makes that happen, then that's great. Do you know what I mean? And if it doesn't have Phoenix Wright in it, that's sad, but at the same time, it's like, it sounds like it has an evolution of what I experienced from the first one. Whether that's evolved so much from me thinking it's around about a 5 out of 10, say out loud for the first time ever, you know, to being a 9 out of 10, I'd have to see. But yeah, you know, Rich has seen more than enough of your shoulder, and he values your marriage and household, so, you know, it's probably a good score to give.
I value it so much. I'm Googling the name so I can make sure I'm putting it on the score spreadsheet.
I think just a final aside, Fazz, like I genuinely love it so much that one of the most like cool things that happened when we went to Japan was I spotted like a really knackered middle-aged lawyer asleep on a tube, but he was wearing the actual badge. They do that, and I was like, "That's so cool!"
Oh.
Was it the same badge as in Phoenix Wright, or was it just a badge?
No.
It is the same one.
Yeah, this is a proper real thing.
Oh right!
Wow,
Yeah.
that is cool.
So in
not
Phoenix
literally
Wright, I
this
was going to say in
one, this one's-
Phoenix Wright logic, you could use that to walk into a courtroom. Because did somebody not walk in with like a cardboard one or something?
Spoilers, but yes.
Brilliant. Comically minor spoilers. I'm having another cola bottle.
How relevant is your game to?
What, to this?
Yeah.
Oh, no way. Like,
Right.
no,
Okay.
no
cool.
way relevant.
That's fine. Right. Okay. So let's. Do you want to see me repeat a trick where I take the first game of a beloved series, a point and click series, and probably give it a middling review?
Sure.
Professor Layton and the Curious Village.
I fucking called it, didn't I?
I've not played this.
I kind of thought that you
I
might
said to
maybe...
Fiona, I bet he's got Professor Layton on the go. As soon as you said Phoenix
Look at
Wright,
you
I was
over
like,
there, solving crimes.
Yeah.
My own.
Haribo in my mouth, solving crimes. Yeah, bring it
I'd like
on.
to see Edgworth do that.
Yeah.
Gumshoe over there. Oh no, wait, better than Gumshoe. Yeah, so 2007 Nintendo DS. I just thought that because, and you know, they've been quite open about this, that the developers said that Professor Layton is based on Phoenix Wright, basically. And obviously then there's been the crossover game of Phoenix Wright versus Professor Layton. I've never I've played this a little bit before. I've never played any more than the first game. And I thought I'll go back to it because when I say played a little bit of it, I probably only played about a quarter of it, I think, first time round, when it was probably, I think, on my friend's DS at university. So I won't spend too much time on it because I think that I didn't like it too much. No, just because I think that it's not. I didn't love it as much as I enjoyed the characters of Phoenix Wright, if that makes sense. So, whereas I think that there was more to, and this is after listening to Fiona explain about how the series has rolled over and Phoenix Wright's side of things. Ace Attorney side of things. Certainly, versus the first Phoenix Wright game, I thought there was more gameplay to this. But whether or not that's a good thing, I don't know. So you are Professor Herschel Layton, pretentious wanker. He's okay. He's all right. He's no Indiana Jones, because I think he's an archaeologist apparently. That it comes, I know. Who knew? But I think he's just really good at Sudoku. That's pretty much like what my understanding of him and his credentials are. He's got his little assistant dude, Luke Crichton, who is the most annoying little twat. I assume he picked him up in some sort of chimney, like as in, I don't really, like meant to be, all right there, Professor. Oh, I'm Luke. I'm like, oh God, I hate you so much. Triton, not Crichton.
I was going to say,
I've got his voice. I've got his, yeah. Fiona, question.
Yeah. Sorry, just as part of my cross-examination. So, obviously, Phoenix Wright games. I'm very au fait with the inexplicably need a younger person alongside me to make me look clever, but I'm a bit creeped out by the fact that he's got a young boy with him and hasn't adequately explained how he came by.
He's got really beady eyes as well, Professor Layton, and I don't trust him either. I don't trust any. If I was to murder Luke, which is entirely feasible that it might happen because he's so fucking annoying, I wouldn't trust Layton to solve that murder, even if it happened right in front of him. So I probably trust more Miles Edgeworth to get to the bottom of that than Layton. It sounds like I'm laying it on thick. The game itself, in fact, I'll come back to the gameplay. The story itself and the animated scenes and the exposition is really well set up, and that's something I do want to say, that I think that this game in the cutscenes, it's so beautiful. That is for a DS game from 2007, it looks absolutely amazing. The voices of the characters, they do grate on me a lot, but at the same time, the characters are kind of fine. The story's kind of fine. The gameplay is weird. It's just it's almost like they've taken a brain training game and just tried to shove it into some sort of story. Whereas at least I kind of got it with Phoenix Wright, that it almost, I don't know, like it feels like if that kind of gameplay fits into Phoenix Wright's world, where you have that soap sort of drama, and you explained it really well before, Fiona, where you sort of have that top end of the character above the text sort of thing, and you do have that PowerPoint sort of feel. Here, it's just like you click on the screen with your little DS pointer, and it's just like, oh, you found another puzzle, and it's just like, and you're just going through steps to do more different types of puzzles, and it doesn't feel like they all link to the story as well as they should do. Oh.
I don't want to keep interrupting
Put
you.
your hand up. No, it's
Well,
okay.
it's either that or I slam the desk. But if I slam the desk, your recording thing's going to
No,
go
it's
on.
fine.
It sounds like my advent calendar. I've got like I've got really into these like escape room advent calendars you can get, and basically every day you open a door as per advent calendars, and but there's a puzzle and there's an overarching story of sorts. Like one time I think like you were an elf in a factory and all the lights went out and Santa was missing and you couldn't find anyone, so you had to go and try and like find the magic button to turn it back on and save Christmas. But it does sound a bit like that, because although they try very, very hard, ultimately you are opening every door and being like, why the fuck can't people just like put stuff away? Why do they have to leave it out in like a weird set of colours so that there's then a puzzle in the books that are strewn over this floor? Do you know, like, why is the gingerbread all in shapes that look like numbers if I hold them up to a mirror? What's wrong with these people?
But that's a perfect example, that isn't, and it's maybe just asking a bit too much to sort of say that you want the story, this really, I'd say, quite intriguing story and these quite intriguing characters to coalesce with what feel like really generic puzzles, and it's almost like you're reading like the back of like a newspaper, and I get that must be really hard to do, but it feels like they just haven't done a good enough job of doing it. Like, as in, and I'm probably just being really critical about that, but I never really felt like they coalesced as well as they should do. There is a mechanic in the story. So, I mean, to give you the idea of the story then for this one, for all the people that you want to, like all the one person out there that's never played Professor Layton, apparently. So you're asked to investigate a town called Saint Mystery or Mystère, I think it is. And so it's a bit like Legal Gentleman sort of esque. I like, as in like, just so, are you local?
I'm solving your puzzles.
Yeah, basically. And you just asked, it's like, oh, can you come and solve this puzzle? So the chap that was like used to be, what's it called? Like the Baron, I think it is, the village. He's hidden an heirloom called the Golden Apple. I really like the word heirloom. Like, it's such one of the best words in the English language. Well, whatever language it's ever came from. Heirloom, wonderful word. But yeah, it's just like you've been asked to come along and try and solve all these puzzles to get to this golden apple. But then every single person in this entire village, which there is a mechanism that if you play through the game to the end, you'll know what that is. Like they're all basically, they all ask you puzzles every sort of 10 meters that you go, and it's just like, and then amongst this as well, like. You've got, like, you can poke a plant pot and be like, oh, there's a puzzle hidden here, sir. Like, that was, that was pretty good, actually, I think, of Luke. And the tip/hint system, which you have to find coins to then unlock. You can have up to 3 hints or tips per puzzle. The hints are always shit. They never help you. Like, as in, like, one of them, like, I swear the first one's just like, oh, look a bit closer. You're like, fuck off! Like, don't, like, how's that? That's not helpful. Like, as in, I
tried investigating.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't be asking for help if I didn't need help, but you're not helping me. And to get hold of the coins, you just have to prod the screen randomly. Like, again, that time wasting thing I was talking about with Phoenix Wright, where it's just like, like you've got to like prod around till you find the right thing. To find a coin, you just have to prod along, and it's like, oh, it's behind this picture over here, and it's just like, and you have to gain quite a lot of coins because each hint is worth 1 gold coin. So if you get really stuck on about 3 or 4 puzzles, then all of a sudden you're out of gold coins. So then you've got to print, you got onto a screen, and there's that, this really wonderfully drawn sort of character there shaking his fist in the foreground because someone's wronged him or whatever, and you've got to solve his fucking puzzle to make him feel better. But then around that you've got to prod every so often just to find a golden coin, and it just doesn't make any sense as a game to make me feel like I'm having any fun, really. Like, whereas if you really like puzzles, I'm sure you probably put up with that quite a lot. But I'm probably just a bit too stupid, like, really, for this game, I think, in terms of understanding.
I mean, you're making it sound like a glorified menu system.
Yeah.
Really. Like, it could be... You could have the same effect with, a really pretty menu, surely.
Yeah, and they try and, like, cover it up really nicely. It's like, oh, this charming chair reminds me of a puzzle I once heard of. And I'm like, does it really? Like, are you sure it does? And there's puzzles where it's like, oh, find, but like a magic eye, and it'll be like, find the star shape in this puzzle. And I'll be there for a really long time, like, thinking, and they're the ones where it's like, and then that's where the hints are too on the nose, because it doesn't work having a hint system for that. It's like, have you tried looking at the left-hand side of the puzzle? Hint number 2. Have you tried looking at the left-hand corner top? Like, this puzzle, I'm like, well, you're just telling me where to look now. Like, so this isn't a game. Like, I'm not enjoying this. So yeah, in terms of, like, I guess what I liked about this, like I say, story, animations, yeah, that it looks pretty good. The puzzles, they're just so lumpy, and the systemization of the puzzles. There's weird things going on where I think I'm collecting a chair for my room. I don't really understand. Like, you collect pieces of furniture as you do different puzzles, and those pieces of furniture goes back to either Luke's or Layton's room. I don't know what's going on there, really. That's never really well explained.
At least they've got separate rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a front. And then there's also, you're collecting pieces of a painting as well. The score system of doing the puzzles correctly. So if you do a puzzle right first time, you get maximum amount of picker-rats, they're called. I think the picker-rats are then used to unlock bonus features. I don't want any more of this game. I don't want picker-rats. I don't like. Eventually, it just gets to the point where it's like, so say you're awarded 40 picker-rats for doing really well at a puzzle and doing it first time round, then it'll get down to like 25 picker-rats, and you'll get down to like 15 goes at this puzzle, and you could be the stupidest person ever, and it'll be like, it won't go any lower anyway. So the scoring system of the picker-rats makes no sense. Like, there's no risk, picker risks. I don't know, whatever. Like, it just. I just got so angry when I was playing this game. And so there's 135 puzzles, like, to complete this game in its entirety. I think I've done 78, and I'm just so done at 78. And I just got to that point where I've done this before with a game where I'm like, I'm just going to watch I'm just going to watch, the story on YouTube. So I just watched the end of the story. Didn't watch what the last puzzles necessarily want to be. I think I looked up the last sort of like 4 or 5 puzzles because I just want to see if they got much better or difficult. And it didn't really look like much had necessarily changed. Just strong art style, but in terms of the actual gameplay of this, I was really disappointed with what I came across. Considering there's a Professor Layton game coming out next year, and everyone's been waiting 11 years to see Professor Layton again, and I think it's 7 or 8 years since the last Layton game. And I see so much love for this series, and this is why I'm saying I'm repeating a trick. I bet if I just played some more games, they probably would evolve and get better. But that doesn't mean that this first game shouldn't be better on its own as well, for me personally. I guess the whole reason I brought this really was almost as a bit of a peace offering for that saying, actually, Phoenix Wright, you're welcome to your objections to come back into my life, and actually you're objectively a better game than the first Professor Layton game feels to me, certainly. The only thing that I really want to see Professor Layton do in 2025 would be to be in a new Smash Bros, maybe, which I would love just to see Luke get the shit beaten out of him, or eaten by Kirby, maybe. Like, I don't know. So do what you like with that. Inconsistent is what I'd call that game.
I've been thinking about, like, would I like it based on what you said? I don't think you solved me. Solved me?
Puzzles!
Oh, no. No, I don't think you sold me on it. I think the things that I think are missing from that I loved so much about the Ace Attorney ones and the Edgworth ones is, first of all, it doesn't sound like those characters had any stakes apart from I like puzzles. So, like, in the Ace Attorney games, they'll often either be caught up in it because, like, whoopsie, there's a dead body in my car boot, that looks awkward, or, like, somebody I know, cough, Larry Butts, has, like, got into trouble and is accused of murder for the 5th time this year. Like, but there is normally a bit of it's not just a murder, there's normally something else that has a bit of a thing to draw them in. It sounds like there wasn't any of that.
There is a big twist. and the twist is shit. Like basically, it's not like they kind of manage to, and then again, like I say, anybody who's playing the game will know what the twist is. Like they manage to do something with the idea that you've been drawn to this really mysterious, curious village, and there is a reason why everyone's acting suspicious and strange and weird, and why they're all giving you puzzles. But
it's how you join MI6.
It's pretty much. It is a stretch.
Here's the key to GCHQ.
It is a stretch, yeah. Again, another game that, like you talk about Phoenix Wright, is it set in California or is it set in Japan? And this is like, is it set in London or is it set in like sort of, I guess, rural France? I don't really understand. Like, as in they're both options, it seems. So, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Score that how you will, but that
Well, I've got one more question.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's not really. I'll be honest. A question. It's more like a way for me to shoehorn something in that I forgot to say. But,
how do you feel about this?
But again, the thing that you also didn't. It didn't sound like you got anything out of the puzzles. And if you're not in a game that is ostensibly about solving puzzles, enjoying solving the puzzles, then that's a pants game. And I was thinking, like, one of the things that I liked, especially in the Edgworth ones, because he is so right about everything all the time, I was just like, and I don't know, would I have felt the same if I had played these a little bit younger? But like, just as like a jaded person in their mid-30s,
yeah,
the fucking job satisfaction that these guys get. How often do I long to go into work and just, rather than politely being like, oh, I think I might have misunderstood you, but actually, if you look here, it's this. Whereas what I want to do is go, bam, here's the evidence, motherfuckers. You are wrong. You are wrong. You are wrong. You should have done what I said the first time. I am smarter than you. And you get to do that in these games. Yeah. But again, it doesn't sound like anyone's really there for you to do that with for Press Layton, apart from possibly your weird boy on the side.
Boy on the side.
That's too far, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, you are congratulated by somebody if you solve their puzzle, like, oh, thanks very much. But it doesn't carry any heft or weight.
You don't get to be smug about it.
No.
And
like, they're just so inconsistent. Don't get me wrong, like 135 puzzles, you're going to hit on some good puzzles, and there are some good puzzles in here, but just I'd rather they half that amount and made them all good. But actually, they've just got some that are filler and some that are real gotcha. Like there's one where it's like, oh, what is the last letter of the alphabet? And this is on one puzzle, so I'm just going to spoil it. But it eventually ends up being that T is the last letter because it's the last letter of the word of alphabet and stuff. And and it tries to make out that you kind of got some sort of that there's a way of thinking about that, and you become a really clever person thinking about it, but. You just feel like I'm sat there just thinking, you're making me feel like a twat, like as in, and it's not making me feel good about playing this game. Like as in, even when I got puzzles and I was like, oh, I've actually worked this one out and I've done a really good job of it, and I feel good about myself. They were fleeting moments. There weren't a consistent feeling of I'm surprised that so many people love this series if it continues in the same vein, because I can't imagine that you would feel good about yourself often enough to feel like like enjoying yourself. Sorry guys for anyone that really likes Press Layton out there, but you're wrong, so it's okay. You want to give it an arbitrary score?
Okay,
based on my review.
So it feels like it's not...
Probably add 2 to whatever I've presented.
Yeah, it feels like it's not enough of like... The puzzles alone, if you just looked at the puzzles, still aren't giving you enough for it to be good, even if you took away the unnecessary character bits around it, and the character bits that are around it aren't adding enough to make it feel like it's giving you stuff that can make you suck it up and work past the puzzles. So I'm going to say we have to score it lower than what you scored for Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney.
Well, I didn't score it technically, so it's fine.
What was scored on your behalf, which I believe was a 7?
Yeah.
5?
Well,
that's a mid game, right? That's,
Yeah, like five around these parts is very, very average.
Yeah.
Like absolutely fine. Not really like overtly broken or anything like that. While you were talking, I actually put my score on the sheet as a 4.
Okay, yeah.
And I think it's the kind of the drag on it. Ironically, if it had included some drag, then it might have been more entertaining. But therein lies the problem. Like it's the window dressing is not entertaining enough to warrant what you're doing. And like you say, later games may or may not have sorted that. I don't know. I think I've only
yeah.
played a little bit of this particular one, so I do know what you mean. Like, and as soon as you said it about just prodding around the screens and being like, "Oh, I found a puzzle," and you're just like, "Oh, good."
Like you said,
In my head, he's like Dick Van Dyke, crossed with that one from Overwatch.
That would be more entertaining, but he's not. This is the thing. Like, Professor Layton as a character is fucking dull. Like, he's soft-spoken, mild-mannered, lovely, but, like, ultimately, you know, I just kind of, like you say about Phoenix Wright, you're in his head. You know how the guy thinks. You know what makes him tick. You know what annoys him. You know what he likes. Professor Layton, he's just like this kind of, he's there. You know?
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that in that way, because it definitely feels like you just, you know, when people draw like a face on an egg.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of what he looks like too, right? With the little stovepipe
a little bit,
hat.
put a little hat on him. Yeah. I'm super interested to see how well the one that's coming out in 2025 does. Like, I feel like nostalgia is going to pump sales up quite a lot. But actually, I want to see what the game's like, because if it hasn't really necessarily evolved too much in terms of gameplay from its first iteration, without playing any of the rest of the series, as I said, you know, that, yeah, I can't see how well it would do. But, I mean, you know, interesting. Rich, spice up my life with something.
Spice up your life.
less Layton.
Before I wade in, quick philosophical question. Not necessarily for an answer, just saying it. Because it occurred to me. You know, I said about the Ace Attorney investigations having that story mode, so the game plays itself.
Yes.
And you see the game playing itself. If a game is playing itself, is it still a game? Something to think about. Not expecting an answer. Not expecting a discussion. I remembered it was Halloween.
Yeah.
And I had a lovely time playing Castlevania Symphony of the Light last year, and got accused of being a bit of an edgelord for giving it a 10 out of 10.
Miles Edgeworth looks like a Symphony of the Night
yes,
character.
The theme's cravats.
Yeah.
He's got such a nice cravat, though.
It does. It is lovely.
You should try harder.
I should buy more cravats.
The theme should always be cravats.
So, seeing as it's Halloween and everybody else has been doing highbrow, puzzly things, I played Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
Oh, wow.
Because I've got to bring out a big gun, otherwise no one's going to fucking remember I'm here.
I've got more if you want
not
to just
true.
pick it up and just run with it.
Majora's Mask is a 10 out of 10 game.
Wow.
I don't care what anybody says.
Really?
Yeah, really. Like, the only real frustrations I had with it were basically depth perception. And like, if you're wearing a Zora mask and swimming forward quite fast, it can sometimes be a bit hard to tell when you need to jump to clear an obstacle. There's a couple of other little quirks to the camera in the N64 version. That was about as far as my gripes went. Now, I played this on the Switch Online, so I could completely ignore the insane save system as it was originally. Obviously, if you want to play it as intended, you can. That's not always been the case. So when they re-released it on the GameCube, you still had to play with the original save system, which meant it was quite difficult to, like, well, it was very easy to lose progress.
I was going to say, why was that then?
Because Majora's Mask has this whole, like, 3-day cycle,
yeah, the cycle
right?
thing, yeah.
The way the save system would work was that you would have to activate a save point, and then it would basically involve the resetting of the day and stuff like that in order to keep your save rather than being like a temporary thing. And like, there was some weird quirks to it. The Switch Online version where you can just set a save state makes such a difference. It really, really does. And on the 3DS re-release of it, they added in some extra save points to make it a little less onerous getting around. They're not in the Switch Online version. Instead, you've got this save system.
Yeah.
There's been quite a lot said online. Like, the other reason I'm horribly glossing over this review is it's Majora's Mask. Like, there is very little I could say that is going to be new, right? That looked like you were about to ask me something. Though.
No, I was going to say that isn't. So my understanding is that this is high-end divisive in so much that it's almost a discussion for most people is this the best Zelda game / one of the best games ever, sort of thing, but most people agree that it is like a high level, amazing game.
Yes,
is that correct?
I think that's probably about right. There's a bit of a bone of contention, which I only kind of found out about when I started playing this and doing a bit of Googling, around the 3DS re-release and how much it changed when it came to some of the core mechanics, like, say, firing ice arrows at water. On the N64 version, you can create platforms basically anywhere, whereas on the 3DS version, it was only in certain places that it would mark. And bosses as well, there was quite a lot of signposting to very obvious weak points in the 3DS version, which you didn't get in the N64 version. So, yeah, Switch Online, I would argue, is probably the best way to play it nowadays. The reason that I wanted to mention it, and the reason that, I mean, well, it basically plays like Ocarina of Time, which plays great. You know, you can do your lock-on targeting and all that kind of stuff. So combat's nice and straightforward when the camera isn't in a close, confined environment and can misbehave a little bit. But, you know, plays great. Soundtrack's great because it's N64 era Zelda, all that good stuff. Continuation of the story. So it ticks a lot of boxes just off the bat. But there are two things that for me really, really elevate it. And the first is that time mechanic and how you can manipulate it, how you can slow it down, speed it up, rewind it, all that kind of stuff. It really, really adds a really, like, unexpectedly fun tension to, say, going through a dungeon and stuff that in a Zelda game. I had at least one point where I was very, very close to beating a boss, but it was starting to get to, like, deadline on the third day. And I was like, oh shit, like it's now or never, let's go. And then you like realize that you've got to do an extra couple of steps to actually, you know, get the item and get out and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, like, I'm not actually sure I'm going to make this. And then you just manage to do it at the skin of your teeth and start the time over again and all that. And it is so fucking satisfying when you pull off something like that, especially when you add in how it just subtly, well, not so subtly, starts to bring in, you know, basically the sound of the apocalypse coming on the third day.
Nice.
And like all of the characters start freaking out about their mortality and stuff like that. It is fucking dark. Which brings me to point number 2, because atmosphere-wise, it is fucking flawless. I swear to God, like, Fiona was watching me play it a few times, and the number of times she said, like, everything about this game is just so unsettling or weird or off-kilter or just scary. Now, I'm not a huge one for horror films or anything like that. My favourite one is the original Wicker Man, because that is very good at creating that atmosphere of just being off-kilter, unsettling, and it just ratchets up the tension over the runtime, and it's this kind of oppressive, like, feeling of impending doom, basically. And Majora's Mask is the only game I've played that taps into that exact same feeling. And in that respect, like, it really knocks it out of the park. And I think it's that helps elevate it, and it means that it's stood the test of time. So yeah,
that sounds amazing, because I totally agree. My sort of thoughts and feelings on horror should be, it should feel inescapable, like, as in it, you shouldn't
it's oppressive.
It just starts to creep up you, and you just like start to feel like I'm not getting out of this now. Showing that
like,
situation,
like jump scares and gore and stuff like that. If you're into that, fine, you do you. They've never really grabbed me. It just doesn't get me in the same way. Whereas something that can get under your skin and like make you just feel unsettled and
to do it in a Zelda game as well.
And to do it in a Zelda game on the N64, you know, is really impressive.
In terms of breadth of this game, then, does it take as long to complete as Ocarina of Time and traditional Zelda games, considering you've got that time limit sort of going over and over again? Or
so, to be honest with you, I've not completed it because I was ill. And frankly could not handle.
There's nothing worse when you're not well.
So I watched many Bruce Lee films. That's as far as I got. In terms of runtime, I think it's kind of par for the course for the time. That said, there's a lot of side quest content that I didn't go anywhere near either. So I think if you were going to 100% it, like, you're going to be there for a while. And certainly, like the dungeon designs are quite clever. So most of them will have like a kind of key item that you need to get, like the hook shot or something like that, you know, a classic. And it's the kind of thing that once you've got that, you can kind of get away with resetting time, go to the dungeon again, and you'll be able to unlock shortcuts and get around it a little bit quicker and get back to where you were. So like you do kind of identify these tipping points where you can hop off the train for a bit, I guess, if you like, and get back on. And I think having that in mind helps. And so, yeah, I think that the runtime could be padded out, especially when some of the side quest stuff as well is actually pretty substantial and will depend on when you find it in that 3-day period and when you return to it or you know, find it originally and stuff like that. So yeah, you'll end up having to repeat that cycle a lot of times to see everything. So yeah, I think you'd be there for quite a while.
It's pretty amazing, really, how that period of Zelda on the N64 just seemed to be like, you know, well, even the whole time. Like, I mean, we spoke about actually one of our least listened to episodes of our podcast, not lamenting or anything, but my review of Link's Awakening, and sort of like just the mid-90s Zeldas just seem to just knock it out of the park, regardless of how they do it. And this is a different twist on it to have that sort of scary horror apocalypse situation happening.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff out there about how it's basically an asset flip of Ocarina of Time, and they just got really creative with it. And it absolutely works. Fiona, you have a question?
Well, not really a question, but as you said, when I saw you play it, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
Like, I think if I were playing that, I wouldn't be, because anything with like old controls I just get really frustrated with, because I didn't play during that era.
Yeah.
And I don't have the patience to learn. But I think, who is this aimed at? Because, like, you know, with the masks and things, I know it's on purpose as well, which is why I'm on the side of this is a very good artistic thing, rather than like they have really fucked it in the way that, like, when they draw those really unsettling, you know, Tom and Jerry things on the side of ice cream vans that make you want to run away. Like, it's not that. They've done this on purpose. But, like, the masks, the animations for the masks, my God, like, when you put a mask on or take it off and, like, you're screaming. Like, Link is having a terrible... It just reminded me of this, like, when I was a kid, I read this book and I can't remember what it was, and I'm a little bit concerned that I might have imagined it, in which case that's definitely worse. But, like... It was like a little horror story, and like it was about somebody who made an unwise decision to like swap their face for like a kind of crocodile mask or something, because they didn't really like who they were. But then they tried to find a person again and could never get their own face back, and it just like it struck the same horrible chord as those mask animations where you're like screaming and like. But what age range is this game for?
Well, that's the thing, because like. I'll go back a step, right? Bear with me. Sure. I will try and make this quick. So, Ocarina of Time, I've never completed, right? I've only ever completed one Zelda game, full disclosure. The reason I never completed Ocarina of Time was when I was playing it as a kid, I got to the bit where Link grows up, goes to Hyrule Town, or the town in Hyrule Castle, whatever, and it's overrun by zombies, or the Zelda equivalent of zombies. And they scream. Oh, how they scream. That freaked me the fuck out. And I just couldn't sleep for what feels like weeks. And I never went back to it beyond that point until many, many years later. And even then, when I've gone back in, I've still not played it as far as that, you know. So Majora's Mask came out not long after that. So were I playing Majora's Mask when it originally came out, no chance. No, it would have freaked me out far too much. And I think part of the reason I didn't play it was because Ocarina of Time freaked me out so much. Everything I'd read about it in like N64 magazine suggested this was fucking worse.
Yeah.
Going back as an adult, I can absolutely appreciate that. Like, it looks like a kid's game, but a warped, like, hellish version of it.
It's like if
almost like
Tim
a sick
Burton
parody.
His style, but it's
But
that
it's
kind
not
of like
far
dark
off.
spin on it.
Yeah. It's kind of like you know, like proper like Grimm's fairy tales and stuff like that, where like, you know, theoretically you recognise everything that is happening in these stories, but at the same time, you're just like, oh no, this is this is a retelling I'm not comfortable with. It feels like that. And even just things like the movements of Skull Kid's head, where this kind of juddery movement either side, it's almost nightmarish. You're like, it's fever dream.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of, it's really, really effective horror. And I will absolutely defend that point to the hilt.
Do you like a kind of literary approach to this? Because I kind of...
Are you saying this wasn't?
No, but what you just said about, you know, the original fairy tales and things, like, there is that aspect of, especially in the original tellings, like, things come at prices, you know, terrible prices, and this, yeah, like, watching you pay that, it's like, sure, Link's,
it's come at a price for real.
Link's going to be the hero. Link's going to be the hero, but he is paying a hell of a price. He doesn't just get to, like, ride in there with his locks shining and fluttering in the breeze, save the day and have a statue put up. This is like, he is never going to be the same again. Like, he's paying in, like, sanity and blood. In fact, it feels quite eldritch horror-y. We were playing a board game about sort of like, kind of like Cthulhu type beasties coming through, where you have to, like, lose sanity as well as health at certain points. And it feels like if you did it today, that's a really similar theme. It would be, you'd have a sanity
even just having the face on the moon as it gets closer over the 3 days.
That freaks me out. How is that the start of your game? I think I would have just put the console down and be like, can't. I'll just read the Wikipedia page.
I think you're right about that. The hero suffering always makes something so much better. I'm thinking of something less sort of highbrow, but it's like, you know, when Dumbledore's drinking poison in Harry Potter and stuff, and like Harry's forced him to drink it, or like when Luke has his hand chopped off. That's a really
dark moment in a kid's book, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just, you know, like anything like that, you just think, you know, when your hero, who is especially someone as straight-laced as Link, starts going through some really rough stuff because he knows he has to, like, just adds so much more gravitas to it, you know, anything like that, really. So really cool. I mean, I know you've told us what score it is, so, you know, that's a bit cheaty, if you will, but don't care. It's already on the it's on there, isn't it?
I'm putting it on there.
Bastard. Right. Okay, well, I've got nothing to say that there's any reason why you can't give that 10 out of 10. It's something that I do want to get into Zelda a bit more. As I openly admitted previously in the podcast, I've only played Link's Awakening, and I want to, you know, play more of them. And they're so long, and I guess that's probably where my question was like, is this shorter?
I've not got time for that.
Like, is this shorter? Can I play a shorter?
I mean, there's a couple of puzzles where, you know, you look at it and you're like, okay, well, if you were doing the kind of 2024 equivalent of this, there would be elements of it that would be signposted, differently, or at least, or better, or something. So yeah, don't get me wrong, like, it is a product of its age, but if you go in knowing that, you know, that's what you're dealing with, a damn near 25-year-old game at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and you can put up with some of those foibles. I think you would have a great time with it. And again, the fact that, like, the age of the game and when it came out, and I think the creative achievement is staggering. Yeah.
Oh, cool. I mean, it sounds a lot less terrifying than the fact there's going to be another Professor Layton game. So, you know, that's fine. But yeah, we owed you probably a bumper pod because we've all been ill the last few weeks and stuff. So, yeah, hopefully you really enjoyed that this week, guys. And we will speak to you all again soon. Cheers.
Bye.